the reason CI is so hard to solve is because you can't solve it once and for all with a well-defined product, because everyone's pipeline is different, because everyone's product is different. It's exactly like factories. Tesla has a factory. They didn't go and buy their factory at the factory store. Yeah. They designed it along with their product, and it's evolving all the time. And so behind every great product, there's a great factory. It's the same for your pipeline.
Hi, this is your host Swapnil Bhartiya, and we are here at Cloud Native Con and KubeCon in Paris. And today we have with us once again Solomon Hykes, creator of Docker and Dagger. First of all, it's great to see you after a long time.
A long time, yeah. Thanks for having me.
It's good to get you back on the camera,
yeah.
which as everybody's tempted, I am also kind of tempted. First of all, what led you to create Docker back then, and now Dagger, and do you have any fascination with the word D?
Yeah, so I think Dagger is a continuation of what I started with Docker. That's how I think about it. We just have our obsessions and these problems we want to solve, and I think we solved a lot of problems with Docker, but then after leaving Docker and taking a break, I realized, wow, developers still have a lot of problems. And deploying applications to the cloud is still painful in new ways, and so we're just continuing the journey. The name, I get that question a lot. Dagger is actually a reference to DAG, which is a kind of graph, and it's all about creating application delivery pipelines modeled as graphs. Just boxes and arrows, always boxes and arrows, and so it's a little wink at this graph layout. Yeah.
So if you look at Dagger and if you look at Docker, is Dagger the continuation of the idea that you have to make it easy to put everything together in a container and they can deploy, or you feel that it's kind of the next step?
Yeah, I think there's a connection. So it's the next step. I think with Docker we had to lay a foundation. We wanted to create a whole ecosystem. For architecting your application and deploying it to the cloud around this idea of a container. And that ecosystem did not exist. So we had to create the standard and promote it. Now this standard exists. Everybody uses it, right? We're in the middle of the 12,000 people who are part of that ecosystem. And so now I think you can build a new generation of tools that take advantage of containers just being there. So Dagger could not exist without the ecosystem that Docker created.
Let's just talk about Kubernetes for a while, and there's no app comparison with whether you look at Docker as a technology or Docker as a company. Kubernetes is known to be very complicated, very complex. And when you even talk to the founders, the idea was never to create something easy for operators. But Docker simplified a lot of things. You don't have to just put everything. That creates its own challenges, but still. So what are the pain points that you see in this new community, that we have with the whole, that you feel need to be solved, whether it's pulling the whole sort of supply chain, integration, and the developer, because we stopped talking about developer experience. Right. We talk a lot about DevOps and everything else. So talk about that from that point.
Yeah, the developer experience is key. I think when we started with Docker and we started introducing containers, it was all to make it easier to deploy applications. Right? Deploy them more, make it easier to deploy, make it faster to deploy, make your application more scalable. And I think in the last few years, with the focus on Kubernetes, there's been enormous focus and progress on the infrastructure side. Running more containers more efficiently in the data center. And it's great that your application scales, but if you're a developer, you want to be productive in other ways too. You don't want to waste time, and Kubernetes alone can't help you do that. So the problem that we see that really needs to be solved is the complexity of the pipelines that leads to production. The builds, the tests, all these workflows in the middle. That part is very painful for almost every software team.
So if you look at Dagger, who is the target on the infrastructure teams, the developers teams?
Since we solve the problem of complicated pipelines that waste everybody's time. What's interesting with the pipeline is it's right in the middle. It's halfway between the developers building the app and the infrastructure teams running it in production. It's literally the meeting point. And a lot of times it's the bottleneck. It's what slows everybody down. The infrastructure is ready, it scales. The application's ready, it builds, but you need to go from A to B. So we end up sort of helping both. A lot of times it's the designated DevOps person on the application side that brings it in to solve some very specific problems they have. Whoever's in charge of CI is in a lot of pain because it's painful to be in charge of CI right now. So we help them, and then that one person brings us into the rest of the organization.
But when we look at CI, and I can also throw the bomb of CD also there. CI CD was always slash there. At one point, it was seen as a solved problem.
Yeah.
So, but do you think no, it's not? It's still a solved problem?
It's definitely not a solved problem at all. I think part of the problem is we have these artificial categories, that sort of slice the problem into little pieces. So CI is a category, CD is a category, configuration management is a category, PaaS is a category. You have Ansible, which is like, IT automation, infrastructure provisioning. So now you have all these software supply chain security products. In my mind, those are all part of the same category. Call it application delivery. I don't know what it should be called, but you can only solve this problem across all categories because at the end of the day, it's a graph of interconnected nodes that deliver the product. So we're just solving the general problem of all these interconnected pipelines, and CI is just a slice of it. So if you look at it in that way, the problem is far from solved because the current generation of CI products are sort of stuck in that little category. For example, you can't run your CI on the development machine. So how do you test on your machine? How do you build on your machine? Well, you have a completely separate universe of scripts and tools, and now you have drift. You have things that happen in development and things that happen in CI. Those should be one and the same.
At one point, Docker solved that problem. It said, it ran very good on my desktop.
Of course. Exactly.
So what I'm also trying to understand is that why this problem is still persist. So there are two ways to look at it. When we look at security, security is never a product. It's always a process. So when I look at CI, is the longer vision is this? It's also kind of process because the way we are developing things are continue to evolve, or it will never become a product. So I want to hear your perspective.
That's exactly right. The reason CI is so hard to solve is because you can't solve it once and for all with a well-defined product, because everyone's pipeline is different, because everyone's product is different. It's exactly like factories. Tesla has a factory. They didn't go and buy their factory at the factory store. They designed it along with their product, and it's evolving all the time. And so behind every great product, there's a great factory. It's the same for your pipeline. So to solve the problem, you need a modular system that makes it easy to assemble your own pipeline in your way, but without spending years doing it. So you need that Lego system, that modular system. That's what Dagger provides. It's a completely different approach to the problem.
Can you go a little bit in technical detail how Dagger approaches that?
So we take a pipe. We'll let you define a pipeline that today is made of shell scripts, YAML files, glued together, and we give you a way to replace those with code. Just little functions written in a regular programming language, Go, Python, TypeScript. And so by transforming your pipeline into little pieces of code, that's what allows you to compose them in a reliable way and move much faster. And then we run that code in containers. That's the other important part. By containerizing the pipeline, you make it portable. You can run it locally, you can run it on your CI server. So now it solves the problem of the pipeline runs on my machine. Now the pipeline is going to run the same way everywhere. So it's the combination of one, transforming scripts into real codes, and two, running that code in containers.
One more problem that Docker solved back then was we all rely on open source, and to just track. I mean, we talk about SBOMs, but when you containerize everything. Of course, the problem was that and ironically, people won't even know what's running in their containers, because they'll be pulling everything. So, supply chain challenge, because we talk a lot about supply chain from security perspective also. There have been a lot of executive orders also in terms of that. So what role do you think Dagger is going to play when it comes to CI, the whole supply chain?
Yeah, once you have that foundation of turning your pipeline into code and running that code in containers, then what you get is agility. Because now you can improve your pipelines as quickly as you improve your application. And so that's exactly like Tesla improving the factory in an integrated way with the product. If you want to secure your supply chain, you need to be able to adapt quickly, because otherwise you're always going to be one step behind the latest attacks, but also one step behind your developers, because they're out there using a new tool, a new language, a new AI model, and you're still trying to re-engineer your pipeline to secure it, to monitor it, to deploy it properly. If you're always 6 months behind, you're not secure, because those 6 months are a liability. So what you want is the ability to move as fast in the factory as in the product design, and then you can have a real supply chain security plan.
So is it like vision is to kind of containerize, Dockerize supply chain?
Yeah, first you containerize the pipeline, then you turn it into code, and now it can move as fast as the application, which is also code. And now you have this integration of the two sides of your product, and now you can efficiently secure it, scale it, move faster, optimize the pipeline, etc. But as long as it's not code and it's not running in containers, you're kind of stuck.
These days we talk a lot about everything as code, infrastructure as code, this as code. What is the Dagger approach? Because there are advantages also looking at everything as code. There are some disadvantages also. So when it comes to CI, is this? We should look at new paradigm shifts. We should look at new kind of practices. Of course, you are building technologies as well.
Yeah.
But how it should be seen?
Yeah. When you think of a CI pipeline as code, you need a sort of a new programming model. But it turns out it's a very natural one and a very useful one. Your program is a pipeline, so it's really boxes and arrows. You can whiteboard boxes that have arrows that go to other boxes. It's a graph. And each box is a little program. They're all running in parallel and they're sending data to each other. It's the most natural thing in the world to think about, but it's not how most frameworks work. So Dagger's job is to give you a programming model that is perfect for pipelines. Once you have that framework, everything becomes easy. I don't know how to describe it other than that. You just got to try it.
Right. It's like in the movie Matrix, right? You have to experience the Matrix.
Exactly.
Nobody can explain.
But it has to scale down. You need to be able to break the problem down to very small units. And each unit is incredibly simple to program. A typical Dagger function is 10 to 30 lines, and your pipeline is made of connecting these functions together. So you break it down into the fundamentals, and that exactly like Lego, and then you connect them, and over time you kind of add to your collection of components, and it gets easier. The composition is the key.
Yeah, the only difference between Lego and Dagger may be that you don't step on them and you're like,
That's true.
when your kids at home. At one point, Docker, with its technology company, it was the most dominating technology at that time, almost as the Linux kernel is and was.
Right.
What is your vision for Dagger?
Well,
you have very big shoes of your own shoes that you have to.
Yeah. Well, I like to solve problems I'm excited about, and I like, once I'm building a solution, I want a lot of people to use it. Um, a lot of people have a pipeline problem. It's just a universal problem across any software team. We have an online community that's very active, very passionate. We have a Discord server where everyone comes and talks and helps each other out. And we have people from everything from students, hobbyists, researchers, banks, government agencies, startups, video games. Everyone has a CI pipeline, and everyone hates it or wants to make it more efficient. So I love that aspect of building a community. And of course, I want that community to grow and to be very large. Ubiquity would be great. The one thing Dagger has that I really wanted Docker to have, but we never got there, is an actual software ecosystem. Everybody uses Docker, or it's very easy to use Docker, but you don't write code for Docker. It's not a platform. It's not an OS. It's a tool. Dagger aspires to be an OS, something you program that you write code for. But it's a very specialized one. It's an OS for pipelines.
If you look at Docker, are there some lessons that you have learned there? So the point is not that you are going to build a successful product or successful company, but the combination of both. So
Yeah.
the open source community is also there, but because commercialization, I feel, is the one that keeps or makes open source sustainable.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
a successful company behind an open source project is also important.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
what lessons that you think that you have learned, which you will implement at Dagger?
Yeah, there are lots of lessons. I mean, one lesson is the model will work. It's possible to build, a very successful open source project and community, and build a business. It's possible, but it's difficult. And if you have a very successful open source project, which is already very hard, you've only solved half of the problem. You still have to build a great commercial product. You don't magically earn the right to make money. You actually have to solve a problem for businesses. And that's something at Docker that we did not very well for a long time. Now Docker is a successful business, but it took a long time. And so this time around, we're thinking earlier about how we're going to do both and how it's going to integrate, build a successful business without being at odds with the community. And the other thing we learned is you have to be aware of what the giants in the industry care about and which way they're going, so that if there are big waves, you're surfing them and not trying to swim against them. And that's something we didn't realize because we were young and stupid. But Docker had a major impact, and a lot of very large and very smart players reacted to it. And it was our choice whether to put ourselves directly in their path or surf the wave. And I think we should have surfed the wave more intelligently. With Dagger, we're being very careful to surf the wave. And so we're not natural enemies of Red Hat or VMware or Google or Amazon. We're natural partners. And I think that makes a big difference.
From Dagger's perspective, do you think we have touched on all the key points? I mean, you and I can sit for hours, but do you think we we have touched on all key points?
Oh, there's a lot. I mean, the one thing that's really interesting to me is CI is a pipeline. There's an ideal way to solve CI pipelines, but then you start realizing there are a lot of other pipelines in a software organization. There's AI pipelines, there's data pipelines, and they're all interconnected. So what we're seeing is Dagger is being applied more and more to improve pipelines other than just CI. That's exciting to me.
And what kind of adoption are you seeing? Adoption can also be open source, open source teams and developers versus customers also.
The beating heart of our community is this Discord server. It's very active, very engaged. There are thousands of people in there. It's like a DevOps fan club. We're all there trying to solve the problem together. And that's the best part of my day is just being there and answering questions and taking feedback. So you can really feel the buzz in there, which I'm very excited about. And yeah, that's the main thing we care about right now, just in community engagement. Yeah.
These days, one of the hottest, the biggest buzzword is Gen AI, LLMs.
Yeah.
How do you look at them when we look at the developer pipeline?
Well, it's interesting because in that community, we see users coming to us and saying, here's how I use Dagger. And increasingly, we're seeing AI components in that. So we're sort of getting pulled into this Gen AI frenzy. And the two ways we're being pulled in, one is if you use AI in your application, that's great. You still have to ship the application, you still need CI, et cetera. And so now there's an AI component in more and more CI pipelines. That's actually a big reason to re-engineer your pipeline, and Dagger is great for that. So that's a natural fit. The other one that I did not expect, but I'm very excited about, we have the system of functions, right? So with Dagger, you can encapsulate almost any task in codes, and you run it in containers, and you have this very reusable unit of work. And we have this ecosystem of Dagger functions now that's growing to do all sorts of things. It turns out OpenAI has this core concept of functions. The LLM can talk to you, but it can also call functions. And all it needs is an ecosystem functions to call. And right now, there's not a lot of ways to do that in a scalable way. So now we're seeing increasingly Dagger functions being integrated in OpenAI using various glue tools. One of them is called GPT scripts, which I think is really cool, by the Acorn team. So we integrate GPT script and Dagger, and then the result is you can ask the AI to do things, and it figures out from the Dagger API what tasks are available, and then it calls it. So it looks like the ecosystem of Dagger functions could in the future become available to AI agents, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah, I talked to Sheng before,
Oh yeah,
before, yeah.
There you go.
But
So
I have been tracking it ever before he did.
That's great.
Like 10 years,
Yeah.
every company moved to.
I love that team.
Yeah.
And I love GPT script.
The 4 people, the core team, they're keep.
So I think this new tool, this new focus that they have on GPT script is a perfect fit with Dagger. I think GPT script and Dagger are going to do a lot of exciting things together.
I want to ask a personal question to you as well, So what do you do in your free time when you're not on Discord server helping other people?
Well, I live in San Francisco. I have 2 young kids, so almost all of my time is spent, with them. They're 3 and 5. I try to be a very present father, and martial arts are a big part of my life also. And since I've had kids and since I've started Dagger, I've had less time. So my quest this year is to start practicing again. Yeah.
I hope you're not planning any trial match between Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, and Salomai.
Nothing like that.
Nothing like. No big. Okay. No. I just want to make sure that that's not your plan. I think now we have hit on some. Okay, one more thing. I also have kids. You also have kids. What is your approach to give kids access to technologies like iPads, Vision Pros?
Yeah. Well, we're very French in that way. We're pretty strict. It's harder with the second one. The first one, no exposure to screen for a long time, and candy. The second one, it's very hard because they see it. It's right there. We try to spend time with them so that when they have screen time, they're not passively consuming. We talk about it. It becomes a topic of conversation and education. I think the screen itself doesn't matter. It's about what you're looking at. There are smart books and bad books also. I think it's the same.
Solomon, thank you once again
my
so much.
pleasure.
It's a pleasure talking to you again.
Yeah.
But let's not keep such long gap.
Of course, yeah.
And let's keep
before,
it, make it,
before all the hair is white.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.